Hey YouTube, Ryan here. All right, I got a unique Arizona experience. Today I caught my first rattlesnake and he was inside my house. I've got some pictures of him. I got him captured out here. I'm about this far from my house. Whoops. Let's go the other way. Here's my house in the distance. I'm about 1,000 yards, not even on my property anymore. And here's our little captive right down here. He's under a pot lid on a plastic plate. I just carried him out here after catching him inside my house. Sorry. So I'm going to, I'm going to release him and film it, and let's see where he goes. And let's hope no one gets bit. All right, YouTube, if you want to see what happened with the rattlesnake, you got to stick around to the end. The purpose of this video is to provide you an update on my homesteading progress. There's a lot of news, actually. I'm going to show you a lot of flooring work that I did, because as far as physically changing the building that I'm in, and which is going to be my future house, I had to work on subflooring, and before I could continue on subflooring, I had a plumbing thing to address. So I'm going to show you that, but let me give you an update on some of the big events that have happened just in the last 2 weeks. Permits. Cochise County, Arizona, where I bought this property, has a really cool process called an opt-out permit, which basically says if you give them a site plan, that shows your setbacks and where your septic system is, septic's a requirement, you can pretty much build almost anything you want as long as you honor, proper setbacks with no building inspections, no electrical, no plumbing, none of that. There's some downsides, of course. You're probably not going to get insurance on your house, and a bank's probably not going to lend on it to any future buyers. But if you're homesteading and it's something you plan on, having forever or passing down to your kids, you may not care about that. And I don't. I am going to pass this down to my son. So I had to file for permits, and I was kind of nervous. I always get paranoid that something that seems really great like that is going to go away, like right before I file for it. So I came out here this trip specifically to file the building permits, and I paid a guy about $1,500 to put together a site plan and do a LiDAR scan. So we had everything like down to the inch as far as location and topography and things like that. So I filed for the permits. I think the fee on it was like $150 plus another 20 or 30 to be able to park an RV here while I'm building. And they turned around and approved my building permits within 2 days. Something to be said for small town living, like rural living. I was able to walk into the building department, the development department for Cochise County in Bisbee. There were 2 women working there. There was no one else in the building. I was able to just walk up, sit down, like ask them some questions, and then file for my permit and have it back within 2 days. If you lived in California or some other New York or someplace like that, your experience with the building department would not be nearly so smooth. But anyway, I filed for the permits, I paid my fees, and I got the permits issued, so I've got a green light to build darn near anything I want as long as it sticks reasonably close to the plan that I filed, which for me was a house that I'm in right now, a workshop garage out back, and then I tried to get permitted for my tiny house, but they said no, one house per permit basically, or per property under this particular rule. So I have to treat the tiny house as just RV parking basically. So that will be unpermitted, but I got that done. So that's huge news. Let's see what else. I got a list here. I bought 13 acres roughly, and I've got a great view to the south and to the southeast. Surprisingly, about 3 weeks after maybe a month after I bought this property and closed escrow, a woman pulled up. People like to pull up here on this property. Considering I'm in the middle of nowhere, I get a shockingly high amount of traffic, mostly neighbors coming by to introduce themselves, which doesn't really happen in the city. So even though I'm in the middle of nowhere, I know like 5 or 6 neighbors now because they just drove up and said, hey, I'm so-and-so. Anyway, this woman drove up and introduced herself, and she is a real estate agent, and she was listing the next property basically across the street from me, across the street and down slightly, but right across the street, a dirt road from the bulk of my property. And she was asking me questions about a well sharing agreement, which doesn't actually exist. And she let me know that she was listing the property. Long story short, I put in an offer to the sellers the very next day. And by the next day, we had a little back and forth with counter offers because they are carrying the majority of the note. And so I'm in escrow on the adjoining 9¼ acres right across the street. Well, why? Long story short is to avoid a potential bad neighbors situation. My view out of my beautiful glass doors, which, let me see if I can show you this. Turn the camera around here. Get closer. Sorry it's so bright. But here's the view. This is my property all in here. And even though you may not be able to see it, there's a line of power poles right here. It's the property right there across the street. There's the street there, if you can see a little bit of it. So it's this property over here. Okay, so that's the property I bought. And the reason I did it is because if somebody bought that and put a house right there, they could be basically junking up my view. They could be shining lights in my direction. They could be playing music or anything along those lines, or just junking up the property. And I have to drive by that property every time I come in and out of my piece of land. So I just wanted to avoid anyone coming in down the line and kind of ruining my view or my piece after I put so much time and effort into building out an off-grid homestead. So I put in the offer, they accepted, it's in escrow, we're gonna close probably the 2nd of July. I don't mind sharing how much I paid for those 9 acres. They listed it at $40,000. I offered them either $22,000 in cash or $28,000 if they carry the majority of that into seller financing. And they agreed to that, so I'm giving them $8,000 down, and they're carrying a note. They're carrying a note for $20,000 at 5% interest for a 7-year term. So I'll have payments on that of about $250 a month, roughly. I think the property taxes are around $450 a year on that. Might go up slightly. But that's awesome. I just went from having essentially 13 acres to having 22 acres. So that's really cool. Eventually I may build on it, like build a rental home or something like that, or maybe just keep it native with the scrub vegetation on there. I'm not sure yet, but that's a huge piece of news. What's next? Oh, okay, the other big piece of news is I was going to go with a regular power drop from Arizona Power, and I was thinking that down the line I could invest in a solar system. But I got to thinking about it. There's a lot of trenching involved. I mean, Arizona Power covers the first $10,000 of costs on their side of it, but on my side, I'd have to do some trenching, buy a big power panel, hire an electrician, and basically spend a few $1,000s to connect the house up. And I started to put some thought into that, and I realized, why would I want to invest cash to sign up for a monthly bill, which even if you're away on vacation and you've got everything shut down, just by being connected to the grid, you have a monthly power bill of around $25 just for basically administrative fees. And I thought, why invest money to sign up for basically a permanent bill? So I changed my mind. I've decided I'm going to take that same money, I'm going to invest in a solar power system right off the bat, which is a little bit tricky because I have a tiny house that I'm bringing and putting out back, the tiny house that I live in now in Dallas. It's going to be near a large workshop that's going to need 240 volts of power instead of the usual 120. And then I've got the house, and they're all spaced out kind of a little bit, so I can't just do one single power system with the distances and all that. So I've got to think through how I can build out and install a power system for the tiny house first that then can be repurposed and used for the garage workshop after I move out of the tiny house into this main house when it's done. and of course build a power system for this house when it's done. So I'm going to do a whole nother video on what my plans are for the power, but I've just decided, since I have rainwater for my water, I've got septic instead of sewer, I might as well be completely off grid, well, except for internet, of course. Oh, that's an update. I got a line of sight wireless internet connection. It's not very fast, but it is no data caps. So that's better than what I've got now, which is fast, but it has a data cap. So I'm always having to monitor, what I download and how much streaming I do, which kind of sucks. So to me, it was worth it to go with line of sight wireless. Anyway, back to the power. So I'm going to be basically completely off grid, self-sufficient, and I've already ordered some used solar panels, like 12, I think I'm going with 16 240 watt solar panels, a big 6,000 watt inverter, and 4 100 amp hour batteries to start with. And I've also decided that I'm going to go with DC specific mini split air conditioning systems that don't do that whole, DC to AC back to DC conversion process. They're just going to basically run straight off the solar panels. And I'm also going to go with the DC powered refrigerator, but another video in the future on that. I've also been watering my ocotillos. Let's go outside and I'll give you a quick update on George. He's looking really good. Okay, it's super sunny and windy out here, but let's go between my cisterns. This is the area immediately to the east of my house, and this is George. I don't know if you remember in a previous video, but he was not leaving fully, but now he's green and fuzzy and has lots of greenery on him because I gave him a good soaking of water. This little guy behind him here also is nicely greened up. Just goes to show the power of what happens when you water things. This ocotillo that has no name is starting to green up. And then down here, I actually did a tiny bit of earthworks. This ocotillo got pushed over by construction or earth, I don't know, someone moved some earth and he kind of got tweaked out and I wasn't sure if he was going to live, but I built a little berm around him, like a Berman basin thing. It's kind of miniature, and I've been watering him, and as you can see, try not to touch the thorns here, he's definitely got greenery starting to come in for the first time. And I've been watering this leaned over one, I've been watering the big one, and this guy here, since this is the little oasis, right around my house. This whole area in here is going to be getting the catchment overflow. So if we get good monsoons this year that fill these two cisterns right here, that little thing out there is overflow. So I'm going to rig up piping that comes over and down, and this whole area in here will get overflow rainwater. And I'm going to have a berm around this whole thing so that the water stays inside. Anyway, you can also see I have some green spray paint on the ground. This is where I was going to trench in from this power pole right here. I was going to trench through here 3 feet deep, whoops, all the way down here, hook, make a turn, and then put a power panel on this corner, near this corner of the house. But again, I've decided not to do it. Instead, I'm going to utilize my open area back here and some of this open area here for solar panels. And well, while I'm at it, let me give you an update on the tiny house parking. So this building is going to be the start of my garage workshop, but behind it, I leveled out an area, packed it down a little bit, created a border with stones, and then ordered 7 tons of gravel, of this 3/8 reddish, reddish brown gravel, and have started moving it. It's a lot of work. But the tiny house is basically going to be parked right in this area with this amazing, gorgeous view towards the west, which is Sierra Vista, and towards the south there is Mexico. So that's my tiny house parking spot. Flip around here. Just wanted to give you an update on how the ocotillos were doing, an update on the whole building permit situation, the decision that I've made about the whole solar power situation. And so now I want to take you inside and let me show you the progress that I made on the flooring. And then I'll show you what happened with my little rattlesnake friend. But I'm about to get to work because it's Saturday morning and obviously I need to show you what I'm going to work on. So this house which is 2 shipping containers. Shipping container 1, see the steel frame, and shipping container 2, a little darker here, steel frame. Well, between them, we've got dirt. The previous owners put in some flooring. Last week, I added all down this side. Last week, I did the flooring, subflooring in all of that corner. And all the way down this side, so this part's done, and I did all of that in here. Little rattlesnake friend was right there. But as you can see, I just have building materials and a hammock and all kinds of random crap. And I had the temporary flooring all done in here, except for one thing. There's no plumbing in this house yet. Oops, there we go. So over here, let me step over here. I've got this black 3-inch ABS pipe, and that needs to go along this steel frame on the inside because my kitchen is going to be somewhere here in the center, maybe over here on this wall. Either way, I would need to, do a drop from the sink straight across. And I think the bathroom is going to be in this corner, or maybe over here. Either way, I need to connect that into plumbing, which is basically going to run along the steel frame. It's going to go through the front wall of the house down to there, which is my septic system tie-in with some black, all those elbows I just bought yesterday from Lowe's. I'm not sure of what the angle's going to be. And you can see this is just dirt. And so my job today, before I can finish the flooring and put it all back together, is to pull out all these insulation bats that the previous owners put in so I can get access to it. There's floor joists that I'm going to have to get between and work around. But now let's walk outside. I'm not going to talk as much because it's windy, but I just want to show you how I'll be penetrating or where I'll be penetrating through the front of the house. So I apologize for wind noise in advance. So clearly this is where my septic system hits the front of the house. We've got steel container, we've got retaining wall, and then steel container. And it's right here in this gap, right about there, that I've got to bring through a pipe. But I want to do it in a way that I don't collapse any of this because this is literally holding up the steel containers. So I think somewhere right in here, I've got to basically dig a hole somehow and get this 3-inch black plastic piping in through there. So that gives you a sense of my task. That's the first thing I have to do today. I'm physically beat up from working so hard yesterday. Whoops, you can't see me. How about, there we go. My knee is swollen and I'm kind of limping today a little bit. Just getting old, I'm 50 now. And working on subflooring, you're getting up, down, and working on your knees is very difficult for me because I have a bad knee. But I took some Motrin, I got coffee in me, I got a chocolate chip breakfast muffin in me, and I'm ready to start going. Okay, it only took about 5 minutes, but I got the bats out of here, and there's black plastic that has basically provided some protection from pests and whatnot down in here. I cut the plastic and just kind of pushed that out of the way. So now I basically have exposed, let me get off camera here. So now we basically have rock down in here between these floor joists, gravel, dirt, that they use to build up the foundation for these trailers, for the containers. And there's the back side. The black and white stuff is expanding foam that's kind of sealing up between the wood that forms the base of the door. And then foam, and then cinder block, and then dirt. So I've got to start penetrating this cinder block right around in here somehow. I'm going to somehow go outside, and I think I'm just going to take my shovel and the pipe and a smaller pipe, starting with a smaller pipe, and just start shoveling and trying to get like a 2-inch pipe through there, and then eventually maybe I'll be able to get a 3-inch pipe in there. So that's the plan. So let's dive into it. All right, YouTube. That took about 30 minutes, but I got the 3-inch black plastic ABS pipe through the front wall. So here's what that looks like right now. It's just basically going right through the gravel and dirt right there. and it's just resting on the dirt. And then it terminates right about halfway back. So I've got a couple of things left to do. I've got to take some metal strapping and put it around this just to give it a little lift and support. Also, if you look on the outside part, I don't know if you can see that where the green tape is capping it off. That's going to have to be cut, and all those elbow fittings are going to have to be, those fittings are going to have to be put in appropriately to connect it up. But the angle may need to change, but you can see it's kind of resting on a cinder block, and then I've just got dirt and rock piled up around it. Once its position is established in relationship to that septic tank connection, I will then block it up with wood and sort of frame it a little bit and put some cinder blocks around it, and then probably pour some concrete on the outside all the way around it, just so it has, no one can pull it through or it just can't move around. Because eventually all that outside is going to be a gravel patio. I'm going to build a retaining wall out here and then backfill it with gravel. So task number 1 for the day accomplished. So that's cool. I'm happy about that. And so now I'm going to do the strapping. I'll take pictures of that. I'll put the bats back in. I'm not sure if I'm going to repair the plastic. Probably not, because I'm going to have to come back in when I do that, pouring some concrete, some sackcrete, quickcrete, whatever you want to call it. I'll probably have to mess with it then. So I'm going to put it back together and then start working on cutting the subflooring so that's all nice and tight and level and ready to be walked on again without it shifting or moving under me. All right, let's get on that. So I got the insulation bats back in, and then all around the edge, I had to clean up some expandable foam that the previous owner had sprayed into a gap there. And here's the deal. Let me show you a little something. Hopefully the focus is still good. When I take my glasses off, I can't tell what's going on with focus. But the width between the edge of this container and the next steel rail right here is about 12 feet, which would be 3 sheets of plywood, but it's not exactly. It's actually more like 12'3", give or take. And they're not 100% parallel. They are slightly out by maybe a half an inch down the whole length of the 40 feet of the trailers. So that's okay, no big deal. I mean, it's impossible to place buildings perfectly. But there was a gap of about 2 inches on this side, and there was a gap of about 2 inches on this side, kind of like this. And you don't want that gap, especially when it's uneven. You can see it's fatter up here and narrows a little bit. I don't know if you can see that, but it narrows a little bit right there. So what I'm doing is basically, as I'm putting in my 3 sheets of plywood, I am taking the edge all the way over, the edge of the plywood, all the way so it's butted up fairly close to that steel. And then I'm doing 1 row, 2 rows, and instead of doing my 3rd row here and then putting in like a 5-inch wide strip to take up the gap, I'm putting the 5-inch wide strip over here in the middle of the field, and then, going to drop the last piece in here. Because the way I learned it is you generally don't want narrow strips of wood like right on an edge, especially where our surfaces right here are not perfectly 100% flat. This has some slope to it. This is sitting a little bit low. And it would create some wobble potentially. So that's why I'm going to put it in here, a narrow 5-inch wide piece. So I've got to rip a piece, put it in there, and then take a full sheet of plywood and rip a little bit of an edge off of it and drop it in here. And it's also got to tuck up under, because the order in which the previous owner, whoops, there we go. The order in which he did this is a little bit off, but I don't know if you can see, my new piece needs to come under here, and it's going to go underneath. I know I shouldn't be touching insulation, but it's got to go under that and then notch around here. So I've got a little bit of work to do to get the plywood in and down. So that's what I'm going to do. So let's get going on that. All right, my friends, I have made some progress on the floor. Let me turn the camera around and show you that a little bit. It is far from perfect. That much I can assure you. But I've got a full sheet here, a little bit of weird notching. I used the sheet that was already there. There is the narrow strip that pushed this that way and pushed it all that way, so that there is very little gap right here. It's going to be an interesting challenge flooring over this metal, because that metal beam stands proud, as they say. This one's in and this one's in, no gap. Got a little bit of a gap going right here, but that can be foamed and taped. I had to take up this black tape. Can you see that? There we go. That was all sealed with foam and tape. I have more tape. I'm going to put that back down and fix that. But because I need to get under here to deal with that plumbing pipe that you can see terminating right there, I've got to get back under there and deal with the black plastic and, you know, some cement. But I've got the pipe in. I've got some strap hangers around it to support it. You can see there's the other end of it coming out there outside, ready to be connected to the septic tank. And yeah, I wish it were lined up a little bit better, but I want, you know, I kind of need to run this pipe along the edge of the floor. It's going to come here, and it's actually going to either go under right there, that first block, or try to squeeze it in that gap and run all the way that way to the back of the house. The water tanks are on the back side. Those will come in, connect to plumbing and toilets and whatnot in there, and then connect up to that. So I got that down, and then I took my temporary flooring up that was in here. So now my next task is to clean out the crap that I've been putting down there. I've got extra insulation, I've got some insecticide to help with rodents. The previous owners left me that. I've got my RV hose, which I don't really need anymore. Not sure what I'm going to do with the insulation. That'll get used somewhere. So I've got to add a couple more floor joists right here to accommodate. I've got 3 sheets of, 4x8 OSB. The stuff's not cheap anymore. It's $65-ish per sheet right there. So I got 3 sheets that will extend me out 8 more feet. So I've got to bring my floor joist out to that point, which comes essentially to this little cinder block retaining wall, if you can see that. But we have a height differential with the ground. Here we got a retaining wall, and then, it's backfilled higher. I don't think that's actually backfilled. I think that's just the native ground height right there. So I've got to put in some floor joists, put in some bracing. Then I'm going to cut my 3 sheets with another narrow strip about 5 or 6 inches wide to take up any gaps. I'm not going to screw it down. I'm just going to leave it in here. But essentially by the end of, within a couple hours, this will all be filled in. Okay, here's our little guy. He was sleeping. Isn't he cute? Look at that little rattle. I'll have to identify which variety he is later. But he was sleeping soundly. He did not get disturbed until even after I put the pot cover on him. It was only after that I slid the plate under the pot lid that he started to move around and get a little curious. He sure got a fat little head. Look at that. Anyway, he's facing away from me. I think I can just do this. And now our little guy, if he so chooses, I put him right near this hole, or right near that hole, so he can go in it if he wants. Look, he's just chilling, man. He don't want to go anywhere. Come on, little guy. I don't want to mess with him, but I may have to get him to go away. Looks like he's going to go back to sleep right there under that bush. All right, my friend, it's time for us to say goodbye. Thank you for entertaining us. Thank you for not biting me. Stay safe. Don't come back now, you hear? Okay, and before we go, two other things that I just want to mention real quick is I've ordered a wood chipper, which seems kind of weird out here in the desert, but I have so much scrub that was removed when this land was cleared, and it's just been neglected for a long time. So I have mounds and mounds of scrub that I could turn into mulch. So I think it was from Amazon. I ordered about a $400 gas-powered wood chipper, which should come in a couple of days. And so I'm excited to start chipping the branches, turning it into mulch. I'm going to spread the mulch in the areas near the house where I'm going to be, watering plants, like out there near George and all the other ocotillos, because that helps trap moisture in the ground and hold it and keeps, rain from evaporating, quickly, and, lots of benefits like that. The other thing is I've ordered a laser level to help me level that big container outside that you just saw, because that's actually, it looks like it's sloped this way, but it's actually sloped that way. I was shocked to find. So I've got to think through how I'm going to lift, a building that weighs many tens of thousands of pounds so I can basically prop it up and get it level. I'm going to have to bring in a crane or a big forklift, or I'm not sure, but that's a future project coming up. But the laser level is going to help me do all kinds of things around here, and the wood chipper is going to help with landscaping. So those should be arriving in just a couple of days. And so make sure, if you're not subscribed already, like, subscribe, share, leave a comment, leave your questions. I'm happy to answer them, and we'll go from there. Thanks for watching. Bye.